Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of our summer series here at Cyclone Fanatic, courtesy of our friends, the Ivy College of Business. I have a special guest. It's Grant Mahoney.
Hello.
Grant, welcome to the pod. I've had Chris and Bloom so far. So,
Oof, I am in elite company then.
yeah. Chris was on twice. I felt like it was time to kick him off. So
Never a bad move.
I appreciate you joining me. I'm very excited to podcast with you just because, you have a podcast, The Cyclone Fanatic, kicking it. If anyone hasn't listened to it, I highly recommend it. You're just so fun. And I'm always wanted a podcast with you. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
really
appreciate
excited.
that. You mentioned that early on in kicking it. You'd sat in on a couple of our episodes and you said, we got to do one together. So here we are.
You're just, we don't know where this is going to go.
Never do. I don't know where it's going to go usually.
So the purpose of this podcast here, we've really been diving into all the different, areas of sports business that, impacts Iowa State. You're a former Iowa State athlete, and I would really love your perspective coming into this as we kick things off. You like that? Kick things off?
Look at her
go. I think with sports, athletes tend to either, go pro, they go into their professional careers. And a lot of Iowa State athletes have found ways to get involved in like the media side of it, which I really love. And I'm glad we get to do that at Cyclone Fanatic. So I think it's really cool that you've done that. So really to start, I would love to know about what that moment was like for you when you got to the end and you graduated.
Yeah, it was tough. I debated, trying out for the NFL or just entering the real world. Thankfully, I had a job waiting for me down in Texas doing medical sales.
Nice.
I didn't train for pro day or the combine or anything like that. I did have a few teams reach out to me a day or two before the draft just to make sure they had the right number for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was more or less like, yeah, this is the right number, but are you aware? Like, I haven't been training. Like,
Yeah.
I have no intention really to go to play in the NFL. So that was kind of unique, but it was difficult. It was a difficult transition to go from being a 4-year starter in Ames, Iowa, where there's no professional teams.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa and Iowa State are the professional teams. You're a big fish in a little pond. Everyone knows you.
Yeah.
And entering the real world, especially moving down to Texas. I moved to Dallas, and I only knew one girl that I went to high school with, who I wasn't really even that close with. She was a class above me, and we just had friends of friends, and my cousin and her husband. So I don't really know anybody in Dallas, and so it's tough to go from, like I said, a big fish in a little pond where everyone knows you, to really, and that's kind of your identity. Being an athlete, It's kind of your identity. To having that identity stripped from you. It was a difficult transition to go from that one, but also two, to try to make new friends, especially in an area where I didn't really have any friends.
Yeah.
But it was also unique because, I was who I was in college, and then entering the real world in a different state where no one knows me, I could kind of, mold myself and be who I wanted to be. So
Yeah.
it was I would be lying to you if I told you it wasn't difficult, because it was, and I know a lot of people do struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad that I've been able to get back into it, and I'm glad I'm back in Iowa and doing this stuff with Cyclone Fanatic, because it's been fun. Sports has always been a part of my life, so it's fun to get back in it and to be involved here.
Did you know that you always wanted to end up, whether that was podcasting or maybe you looked at other areas? Was that something that you always kind of had on the back of your mind, or did it just kind of happen?
I wouldn't say I've always kind of had in the back of my mind, because podcasts really kind of became a thing when I was, I think, kind of towards the end of my college career, maybe even shortly after that. So I don't really ever think about podcasts, but I had thought about, staying involved in sports in some way, whether that was in, for a time, I thought maybe I wanted to be an agent, kind of go that route, or be in marketing. Even the last, I started at Iowa State, I started in marketing, and then got to some hard math classes, and I was like, nope, I'm out of here. So I transitioned to a different major. But I wanted to get into marketing, and specifically sports marketing. And even just a few years ago, I reached out to a friend of mine who, she's in Boston, and she represents like Allie Raisman, Michael Phelps, and kind of stuff like that. Some kind of sports marketing that way. I don't have a marketing background, but I've kind of wanted to, to get that to go in that route. But I've always wanted to stay involved in sports in one way or another. Now, I didn't necessarily know podcasting, but
Yeah.
I reached out to Jeff. When Stansbury had left, I reached out to Jeff and said, "Hey, I'm not sure if you guys are interested in doing this, but this might kind of be a fun concept to do. What we're doing
Mhm.
right now with the summer series on Kicking It." And he was like, "Yeah." Like, I reached out to Chris, and then like the next day, Chris was like, "All right, cool. You guys are starting a
Let's
new
do
show in 2 weeks." And I was like, "Oh shit, that kind of went fast."
it.
But it's been fun. So it's nothing that that I really thought, for a while. Yeah, I'm gonna get into this.
Yeah.
But I had talked to my wife about it. That I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy talking sports,
Mhm.
and she was like, "Well, why don't you try to find a niche to get in?" And yeah, it just happened to be an opening that Stansbury left, and I was able to dive in. And Chris took a chance on me. I think it's been going well.
Yeah, I think Chris does a really good job of connecting with former athletes and like giving them that platform. Just because I think the perspective of a student athlete, like I said, it's always going to be unique versus the one of, those of us who weren't athletes. So I do really value having those voices kind of mixed in with like me and Rob and Connor. Because I mean, we weren't Iowa State student athletes, but when you look back at being in college, when you were getting ready to graduate, was there like, did you feel ready? Like, did you know, like, okay, I'm about to be done playing football?
Um, I don't think anybody is ever ready, and they say your 4 years goes by fast,
Hmm.
and the days are long, but the years are short, and it was tough. I mean, thankfully, we ended on a high note, beating Oklahoma State, but
Yeah.
then losing in the bowl game.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'd kind of lost my love for it my senior year.
Yeah.
I wasn't performing very well. Geyer had taken my spot. I was still doing kickoffs and long field goals. But just some of the coaches on the staff were really messing with us to the point where I just kind of lost my love for the game, which I regret. Not putting them aside and trying out for the NFL. Where my stats weren't the best, I feel like I had the ability to at least try out. And
Hmm.
there's been times where I've regretted, since graduating, where I didn't at least try out for the NFL. But to answer your question, no, never, no one's ever ready to hang them up. But
Yeah.
there's always that final snap, that final kick, whatever it might be. Where it's the end. I saw someone say one time there was one point where you sent out your last AIM message, and you didn't realize that was going to be your last message, like on AOL Instant Messenger.
Yep.
I was like, well, it's kind of the same thing in football. You didn't realize that it's going to be your last snap, and yeah, reality comes fast.
Yeah. That's like depressing to think about.
A little
Like,
bit,
oh, last snap.
yeah, a little bit happens to everyone though.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think as college students in general, it's definitely a difficult transition. But I feel like the student athlete perspective is just so different because you guys are just so engulfed in being student athletes. Like it is everything about you all day, every day, from the moment you wake up till you go to bed. And just being friends with athletes, just like the schedules you go through. I mean, from your perspective, and now that you're kind of more involved with keeping up with it with the podcast, what has the evolution of being a student athlete? Like, what does that look like from your perspective? Like, what are your thoughts as you watch today's athletes who are basically sports professionals now?
Yeah, it's demanding. And there wasn't NIL when we were there.
Right.
We would get monthly stipends of it's like $600, which
Mhm.
is nothing to what the guys are making now. Um, so the world of athletics has really changed. We had Coach Rhodes on Kicking It this week, and he had mentioned that when he was coaching us at Iowa State, they would really put us through. It was tough love, so they put us through hard workouts,
Mhm.
and really they demanded a lot of us, but it really, your toughness really came from that, and they really, were establishing a mindset of, when times get hard and tough to grind through it. And he said they don't do it anymore. That they don't, kids are with the transfer portal, with NIL, that if you push a kid too hard, he's going to say, you know what, forget this. I'm going to go transfer and play somewhere else,
Mhm.
which is sad. But as far as what it's like to be a student athlete and what it would be like today, I feel like it's maybe even more demanding now than it was when I was there, because due to the NIL opportunities, you've got Rocco and Abu and Audie Crooks, everyone who went to the softball charity game this last
Mhm.
weekend. So they're doing a lot more events and showing their face here and there. And like you said, they are like professional athletes. They're literally getting paid to play. And it was very demanding when I was there, from the training table
Mhm.
to tutoring to, I mean, we had workouts at 5 o'clock, and then I wasn't home until 8 o'clock at night. And I was, in between all of that was practice or lifting, and then class, and then lunch and all that stuff, being a student, and then getting in for a training table. If guys were hurt, they had to go in an hour or two before practice to
Mhm.
get stretched or taped, whatever it might be, and then practice, and then tutors, and then dinner, and then you know it was long, demanding days. And I feel like the guys and girls now, are a lot more is expected of them, with all the NIL stuff, and all the appearances they have to make to fulfill those obligations.
Well, and again, I feel like we, especially now, we forget that you're still a student, so you're still going to class, and it's not like every single student athlete is taking whatever people consider easy majors.
Yeah.
Like there are, I mean, there's tons of Charlie's the one that comes to my mind because wasn't it he graduated as an engineer?
Charlie and Chase, I think both
Okay,
were.
I was gonna say I know some of them are deep in there pursuing really difficult degrees that I definitely would not. I could not have
Which the,
survived.
the, the degrees in and of themselves are tough. Then you
Right.
add like the load of football on top of them. It's like, whew, these guys are not only smart, but like you got to have like your ducks in a row to,
Yeah.
because with I had a communications degree, which was one of the easier ones, and it was not super demanding like engineering, where it's
Right.
geared towards if you're a industrial engineer, you've got an industry you're going to, whereas communications is a little more open and broad. And the communication degree, the classes were so flexible that they could schedule our classes around football practice. Whereas engineering,
Mhm.
we had a lot of guys in the team who were engineers when I was there, and like they had a class at 3 o'clock, you had to go to class, and then those guys would show up late to practice. And so I think a lot of people don't realize that those more demanding degrees, um, guys are sometimes missing workouts, or they're late to meetings, or whatever it might be. So the guys that are in the harder, demanding degrees, that's like a whole nother level of
Right.
commitment that's there.
Yeah. How do you think you would do if you were a student athlete today?
Um, I think, yeah, I think I'd be the starting kicker still. No, I don't know. I think Kyle Conrad. I think he's gonna be a dog for us. But um, I think I would enjoy it. I always enjoyed they still do it today. The Fridays before home games, they go to Mary Greeley, and they see some patients who are sick, or the kids who are there, whatever it might be. They visit the hospital. I always enjoyed doing that. I always enjoyed doing different types of volunteering opportunities. And to be honest, I wouldn't really, if I were a student athlete today, I wouldn't want to do the events and show my face and, you know, kiss babies and sign autographs, whatever, for the NIL part of it. But I like
Mhm.
connecting with fans. And I felt like when I was at Iowa State, we didn't have enough events like that where we connected with the fans.
Yeah.
Which is one reason why I really enjoy doing the Kicking Up podcast, because
Yeah.
interacting with the fans, and hearing from them on social media is fun. It's fun for me. Um, but I feel like the athletes now are, um, especially with social media, they have a lot more linear path between the fans to interact with them, which can also be a double edged sword.
Mhm.
But I would have really enjoyed, if I had the opportunity to do what the guys and girls are doing now. Um, I think I would have really enjoyed it, but it would be a lot more demanding. I'm not gonna lie.
And you bring up social media, and for some reason this came to my mind. You almost have to, I'm sure they do, have some kind of like social media training type
I
of
have to.
stuff just because of how crazy social media is now, how prominent it is. But it makes me think of all of like the random tweets people dig up from like old athletes. Like think back to Jameel McKay. Do you remember his tweets?
Uh-uh.
Oh gosh, we'll have to dig them up after this. But like the rules were so different. Like the evolution of social
Yeah.
media and how much like a athlete's brand mattered is so different from what it was back then. I mean, covering David Carr. David Carr's, I think that's a slept on student athlete at Iowa State when it comes to what his brand meant. I mean, he has to be so on at all times. So I can't even imagine that as an individual being, I don't know, 22, 23. And I think back to myself at that age, I was not on.
No, and that and my I don't think I had Twitter until my senior year. And so I had Facebook.
Okay.
But one thing that Coach Chiswick and his wife would really preach this was to stay off social media, especially during, I think Iowa does this for football, which I actually appreciate them doing this. They stay off social media. She told me to stay off Facebook. Don't read the news clippings. Don't read news articles. Like just stay zoned in.
Mhm.
And I felt like my freshman year was when I had maybe my best year, but my most like focused year
Mhm.
because I wasn't worrying about what outsiders were
Yeah.
saying. And I wasn't letting news clippings get to my head. And that'd be tough. That'd be tough to be a student athlete, today where you've got, I don't know how many different platforms on social media.
Right.
But to block out all that outside noise, because you've got so many haters, so many people hiding behind burners that are, saying this, that, and the other and doing whatever they can to try to tear you down and not see you succeed. So, yeah, the world today and from that aspect, being a student athlete would be really difficult.
Do you remember, I think it was Cole Netton, is that how you say his last name?
Yep.
It was him, right? Aiden, you have to look it up. He made that like compilation of all the hate tweets he got about how bad of a kicker he was. And then it was like, then he, turned it around.
Yep.
I can't even remember what ended up happening at the end of the season that he made it, because then people like turned their tune and they were like, no, we love you. And he made this whole video about,
Which is crazy because and that's kind of what I mean, is that people say whatever just to try to tear you down. He's one of the more accurate kickers in Iowa State football history. And had some legendary
yeah,
kicks.
people were hard on him.
Yeah. And so, I've got no doubt that, if Abu or Rocco or whoever, check their DMs or check their mentions from people who they don't follow, they've got haters every day. Which sucks. It sucks that that's the kind of world we live in. But I think, like you said, I'm sure they probably have some kind of social media training where
Yeah, they have to.
they're telling them what to do and what not to do.
I mean, if you got interview prep, I'm sure social media is now like a very heavy topic because, I mean, there it is. It honestly, it's a fabulous tweet.
Yeah.
I do love it. Did you ever see this?
Yeah, I've seen this. Because Cole is he does like his own like drone business and stuff. So he's kind of in this.
What? I did know that.
Yeah, he's kind of in this world. And I love that. I love that people are clapping at him and he's got the last clap.
It's almost like, again, you sign up, you sign your letter of intent, you go to university to play a game, I say, I don't know, basketball, football, whatever. Yep. And suddenly you're not only this 18-year-old going to go play a sport you've been playing, but again, business professional.
Yeah. And you got, you've got, people who are envious, who may not have been able to play at that level or play in college at all, and will just say whatever. Like I can't remember what game it was. Might have been the K-State game where I got the PAT blocked, and I remember the guy's name. He had sent me a Facebook message saying, "I hope someone pisses in your Cheerios."
Oh my god!
Yeah, and I'm like, well, okay, like, all right, bud. So I just, and that I'm sure there are, much worse things that have been said. There's been death threats to people. It's just, it's sad. It's sad that that's the world we live in.
It's like we finally get NIL for student athletes to get paid.
Yep.
Which they deserve. I mean, they're brands, they're walking brands. And then we have to also accept the bad parts that come with it, which kind of sucks. But the future of NIL is a whole other podcast.
Yeah, well, and I think a lot of guys are doing good for the NIL. Like yesterday, when we interviewed Coach Rhodes, I had on I Cheer for the Punter, which is Tyler Perkins' NIL shirt, and all the proceeds from the sale of that shirt go towards, I can't remember the name of the program, but it goes towards kids at Ames High School who may not have the funds to get lunches. And so, when people are doing stuff like that, the NIL world can be very good, and you see Rocco, putting on the camp for the kids, stuff like that, giving back to the communities. The positive side of NIL is really good, but then you've also got the really greedy side of NIL, which is not so good.
Yep, I agree. I think Iowa State, and not even just because we obviously cover Iowa State and talk about Iowa State and support Iowa State, but I think Iowa State's a really good example of how it's used for good and how to impact the community. So
I think one thing too that TJ looks at for guys and basketball, I know he's had some recruits and some transfers who have come in and they've really pounded NIL, and TJ will say that's not a fit for our program.
Right.
So they'll get paid, and I think the athletes know they'll get paid, but I think the coaches have the right mindset in that we want you to be here to grow. And like, if you grow and achieve what you can achieve with us
Mhm.
and succeed in the way that we think you can succeed, yeah, you can get a nice chunk of change now. But if you really put in the work, you can go to the NFL or the NBA and make even more money.
Yeah.
Which you've seen some guys who were starters at Iowa State, potentially chase money that now they're not playing.
Yeah. So, talking about not following a pro career, tell me what are you up to? You said you could be anyone you wanted to be. So, who are you? What did you do after college?
Yeah, so out of college, I moved down to Dallas, lived there for about 9 months, and then got promoted and took me to Austin. Lived there for about 2.5 years. So I lived in Texas for a little over 3 years doing medical sales. Um, just didn't feel like home, and then I moved back to Iowa where I was doing medical sales too in the operating room, and now I'm in tech sales, which is great because I work from home.
Mhm.
I love it. I was driving all over everywhere, all over Iowa, all over Texas when I lived down there. And I'm only driving like 100 miles a month now, which is great. I was driving like 5,000 miles, previously. Um, but I really think, who I am, I was able to really hone in on, what was important to me. Being respectful towards people, really kind of pursuing my interests. And I wouldn't say that I would have gotten made fun of them, but like I enjoy, watching, um, dumb shows. Like I just finished up watching Perfect Match season 2. Didn't
I
watch
love
season
that.
1.
I love that.
So like I enjoy watching those kind of shows, and I've really realized that there's some toxicity when it comes to being an athlete, especially in a sport like football where it's very masculine,
Mhm.
and to have some, I don't say non-masculine traits or non-masculine interests um, that could get looked down upon. But I've always leaned into that my entire life, and to really kind of lean into that more out of college. And then, since I become an adult and really kind of surrounding myself with the right people who just like me for me and
Mhm.
are fine with those interests. Yeah, that's things that I really enjoyed. Like I think people who listen to Kick It, they know I've gotten into beekeeping this year. So it's something I'm really passionate about and I really enjoy and really love, and, trying to save the bees and try to do my part to kind of try to save the planet. Um, so really just for me, it's one big thing that I've really leaned into the last couple of years is just really go for stuff that makes you happy. Now, don't wait until you're retired.
Yeah.
Book the trip, travel, do it now. I'm not saying obviously live outside your means, but beekeeping. I was gonna get into that when I retired.
Right.
And my wife was like, "Why? Like do it now." We've had friends who are my age, who have passed away. I'll be 35 in a couple weeks,
Mhm.
and I've had friends who have passed away. I've had my mom passed away before she was able to retire. My wife's best friend's mom passed away before she could retire. So really trying to lean into living the life. I guess I'm kind of getting sappy here, but living the life that you have on this earth, and getting the most out of it now, as opposed to waiting until you retire and just
Mhm.
doing things that make you happy, um, is something I've really leaned into the last couple of years.
Yeah. I feel like that's a fun part of having the We Will Collective and some of the parties that, Chris has made an annual event for Cyclone Fanatic is being able to continue to stay in contact with former athletes. Like it's really fun to have Colin Newell around, and it's really fun to get to see a lot of the guys come back for like We Will events and to just know like what's everyone up to. Because yeah, like we're discussing, not everyone goes on to play in the NFL. Not everyone goes on to play in the NBA or WNBA. So it is fun to see what careers you guys pick. What did you get married? Did you have kids? What are you
Yep.
guys up to? It's a fun part of the job, I would say.
Yeah, and that's a big thing we kind of leaned into with this off season series on Kick, and interviewing former guys that we played with or that coached us, and
Mhm.
yeah, just kind of what are you up to? What are some things you remember at Iowa State? Um, what are your impressions? And we've pulled out some stories that I didn't even know about.
Mhm.
And so yeah, next week we've got Coach McCarney on. So I'm curious to see what his perspective is, because I didn't play for him, but he was kind of a pivotal point in Iowa State football history. But he's going to have stories for us that I don't know about, and really what he's been up to, because
Right.
he coached Iowa State 20 years ago, but he's still super involved with Iowa State. So like what have you been up to the last 20 years? And yeah, it's gonna be fun.
It's definitely cool to see the people that continue to stay involved, and obviously
Yep.
Coach Mack is one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's fun to see how he's involved. I mean, Georgia Yang's coming back soon. I think they were saying that some of the NBA players are coming back for the summer
Yeah,
for a little
and
bit.
I love that Bloom is orchestrating all of that. Not all of it, but most of it.
Right.
And the golf outing they had football guys from all kinds of decades. That
Yeah, why didn't you go? Were you out there?
I was not. I'll be there next year. I had a full day packed full of meetings and stuff. But I actually text Brent today and I said, hey, next year as soon as you know the date, let me know and I'll take that day off so no one can schedule meetings for me. I'm bummed that I missed it.
Well, that's crazy. Like, I don't know how you get, what was it, like 150 or something, former players to come back and just hang out.
And not just any former players, like
right,
like Purdy was there, Hummel was there, some big name guys and big name coaches.
Yeah, I think super cool. I don't know where NIL is headed. Obviously, it's all driven by money, and who knows what the NCAA is going to do. But like, I think it's also given such an opportunity for things like that.
Yeah.
Because when else would you have 150 former players and coaches?
Yeah, and a lot of guys, are golfing, this summer anyways. Like I'm in a golf league with a few former guys that I, played with. But you're going to spend that money golfing anyway, so why not spend it golfing with former teammates that then go towards, the student athletes. It's just it's brilliant.
It's definitely a good little marketing trick that Bloom has figured out there.
He's a smart dude.
So when you look at athletes like today, I mean, we're talking about like the Roccos, the Abus, Jalen Noel, all those guys that are in there, and not even just football. We can talk about all the athletes at Iowa State, but if you had to give them advice, like they're sitting in the room with you, what would your advice be to them as they navigate this new normal?
Ooh, good question. I would just say stay true to who you are. I have seen even guys that I've played with, guys that I know, maybe guys that I didn't play with, that money's changed them. Stay true to who you are. That's one thing I love about Brock. I don't know the guy personally.
Yeah.
But he just took his team to the Super Bowl and he was, an injury away from taking him his rookie year. And he's about to get paid big bucks, when his contract's up. So I've got no doubt that he's going to stay grounded and stay true to who he is. That's the biggest thing for me is don't forget, where you came from, stay true to who you are. Always give back if you have the means. But at the end of the day, I would just say stay true to who you are and stay focused on the job at hand. Don't let, if you get a big deal, whatever, don't let the money or success whatever get to your head. Just stay grounded and keep pushing through.
What do you think about being a student athlete in your time at Iowa State? How did it prepare you for your future?
It really taught me, and Coach Rhodes was huge in instilling the right mindset for us. He used to always say anything worth doing is doing at full capacity, and whatever you do in the dark will come through in the light. So like basically if no one's watching, still do good. And I think, for the demanding schedule that we had, and just the stuff we had to be here at this time. And then once that's done, you got to be here at this time and you've got, 15 minutes to be there. So make sure you're there on time. It just really taught discipline. It really taught teamwork, and just putting your all into whatever you do. And I think, and I mentioned it in the show yesterday, we had Coach Rhodes on that I would not have wanted to play for anybody other than him. And they just really taught us tough love and to not be soft and just to push through and give it your all. Like I said, I'm super just happy with the staff that he had and the lessons they instilled in us.
I feel like every coach at Iowa State has given some kind of variation of they're, coaching you guys to play well, perform, win. But at the end of the day, they're more focused on making sure you leave a better person than when you arrived. So I always think it's really interesting to hear, especially you just said you're turning 35 soon. So you've been out of it for a while now. So I feel like this is where you can see how did that go? How did those lessons work out in the end?
Yeah.
So.
And Coach Rhodes, he'll still text me on my birthday, wish me happy birthday, which is cool. He doesn't need to do that. But I still maintain relationships with a lot of the guys that I played with. And we're they say brothers for life, and like, oh, a cliche, whatever. But you really are, you really are. And you can stay as close with someone as you make it. Like A-Rob, I haven't talked to A-Rob since I graduated outside of one time. I saw him last year at a game, and talking with him, it's like, haven't seen him for a day or two. So it's I'm forever grateful that I had the opportunity to play at Iowa State and build the relationships that I built with the guys I played with and the coaches that coached me.
How nice was it when you didn't have to wake up for those 5 a.m. practices?
Oh man, I'm a morning guy. But it was, yeah, those, especially in the winter. Oh God, it was so brutal. I remember there was one time that Geyer and I woke up and we were roommates and we had
Mhm.
to be there in like we had like the workout, the lift, whatever started in like 15 minutes, and it took us like 9 minutes to get there, whatever. I'm like, oh, we gotta get going. And he had to scrape like a small square in his windshield and it kept fogging over. And so I remember he drove with his head out the window, driving us home. And I had my sweats on, and I remember putting my sweatshirt like over my knees, and I was just curled up in the shotgun seat and just asking him, okay, let me know when we're there. Let me know when we're there. So those mornings sucked, but the mornings where we didn't have to work out, we'd still have to, like after games, we'd still have to come in. Even like there were some games where he didn't score, so I only had one kickoff. But
Mhm.
you still had to come in the next day to check in for training, to cold tub, to get stretched, to get taped up, whatever it might be. Um, so that sucked, especially after a day of going out and drinking and having fun at the bars. Um, but the mornings where we didn't have to get up, yeah, we'd still get up, but then we'd just be relaxed that we didn't have to, really do anything football wise.
Do you think that your grueling, like, football schedule with balancing all the million things you guys had, did that make going into, like, a corporate job easier?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think so because everything was so structured, and that's what I was used to. So
Mhm.
I had to, and I still carry that with me today. I have to, and this is probably my ADHD too, but I have to be very like list oriented. And once I'm done with this, I check that off onto the next one. Once I'm with
Yep.
that, check that off onto the next one. I use my calendar, my phone all the time because I have to, be organized that way. I have reminders of, okay, you got to leave at this time. So that, I think that's probably more so that's what's been instilled in me than my ADHD taking over. But they're lessons that are good for everyone because you got some guys that are, just shitheads, not on time, and
Mhm.
you know need someone to hold their hand, which I know that those lessons being instilled in them, were beneficial to them.
Yeah. When you look back, do you have anything that you wish you could have done differently? Like you said, you wish you would have worked out, or trained for the NFL. When you look back at those, were there other things that you think, "Oh, I wish I could have done that differently?"
Yeah, you know, David Montgomery really set the culture, I think, for what Iowa State football is today.
Mhm.
He would be in the indoor, um, putting in extra drills, extra work, you know, Friday night, Saturday night in the off season, whatever, when a lot of guys would go to the bars. I was a student athlete, but I didn't lean into being the athlete as much as I probably should have.
Yeah.
I wish I would have spent more time in the off season, in the indoor, um, working out and not gonna lie, being in college,
Yeah.
Welch Ab's fun. After games, especially big wins, Welch Ave is fun,
Mhm.
and I really wish that I would have taken my academics more seriously. We had tutors, but I didn't take them seriously, as seriously as I should have, I should say. Um, and I wish I would have had more of a David Montgomery mindset where if I was going to go out, at least get a workout or something in before and get that
Mhm.
work in. And I didn't, and I really wish I would have because I feel like had I done that, I probably could have played at the next level. Um, so I'm glad that culture is there now because it was definitely not there when I was there.
Yeah, and you say that, and maybe it's because 'cause I'm older now and I'm not named, so, like, maybe it's because I don't see it as much, but I feel like you really don't hear about, like, student athletes really being out as much as they used to.
No, you don't, and I don't think it's really a part of the culture. I mean, when
Mhm.
I was there, it was. We had a lot of guys come in to workouts, Saturday mornings in the off season, Sunday mornings in the off season, just reeking of booze. And you don't see it anymore. You don't hear about guys getting in trouble on Welch Ave. Yeah, you saw that video of a former Iowa State guy who was a little intoxicated making bets, on the phone. But I think he was an outlier. And it wasn't the culture that you see today,
Mhm.
which is why I love this team that we have because the culture that they have now reminds me so much of the culture when Purdy, Lazard, Brees, Charlie, all those guys were there. I feel like the culture now is back to where it was when you kind of had a year or two, a rough stretch.
Yeah. Another thing that I had thought of that I kind of forgot to bring up was about how, your identity being in football, and it's kind of like very masculine. It is. It's a very masculine sport. I feel like the thing with NIL that's really opened it, and I can't remember, Aiden, you might have to look for me if you guys don't know off the top of your head. The student athlete who got the NIL deal was Sally Hansen, the nail polish.
Yeah.
What's his name?
The guy for Duke. He's a basketball player. I follow him on Instagram. I can't remember his name though.
Yeah, like I feel
Jared
like
McCain.
Yep.
okay, that's
solid,
what it is.
solid dude.
I feel like as times have gone on, and now that we have, money's involved, these big brands are involved. Like I feel like it's really encouraging these athletes to also be more creative and be more comfortable in themselves. And that one comes to mind because it was so different and unique, and I love it.
That's what I love about that generation too. You see it with Caleb Williams too.
Yeah, Caleb Williams.
He had his fingernails painted, and people were kind of like, "Oh, this is the first." They were making just disgusting jokes about how the Bears will have the first trans quarterback in NFL history. It's like no, like it's just disgusting that that they even went down that path. And I love that about that generation that they are who they are.
Yeah.
And what'd you say his first name was? Jared? Yeah, that Jared, he doesn't care. People have made jokes about him, about questioning his sexuality, whatever. He's like, you can say what you want. Like, I do this because I had a good game one time when I painted my nails, and I do it still because I like it.
And now he's making bank.
Yeah, he's like, I don't care. I don't care what you can say what you want. I don't care. It doesn't bother me.
Right. And they look great. Like, I feel like the fashion side of it is really big in the pros, but it's slowly steeping into college. Like I know you can now, get paid for wearing certain shirts, wearing certain brands. So I do like that part of NIL too, where I think it's encouraging athletes to really embrace like their creativity and and what backpack are you using?
Well, yeah, and like I kind of mentioned, like pursue your your passion. If you're passionate about Stanley water bottles, get an NIL deal with them, and that is cool because then I think it just empowers the athletes even more to lean into who they are and to individualize themselves, to find their passion.
What would be your ideal NIL deal? And we're not talking money. We're just talking like, what would you have liked to be your brand?
I mean, I think the stereotypical answer would be, to a Nike Gatorade type sponsor.
Yep.
Because I wear a lot of Nike gear and I don't drink a lot of Gatorade now, but in college I did. Gosh, I don't know. That's a good question, but I would say there isn't like a big like known beekeeping company.
But like bee.
Yeah, but I would lean to that, or I would lean into just like to corporations that are really pushing for saving the bees or about those type of like I that's one reason why I love what Tyler Perkins is doing, leaning into his NIL, teaming up with Ames High School and having his NIL dollars go towards that. I would want to be represented by that type of organization. At one point I was looking at potentially getting into the Red Cross and getting a job with them.
Yeah.
So that type of thing. My mom passed away of breast cancer. So like that, the Susan G. Komen has always been big to me. Just cancer in general. I always wore a Livestrong band growing up. So I would say those kind of foundations I would love to have if I was a student athlete, to have, a deal with them.
That's awesome. Well, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't know. This was fun.
Yeah.
I appreciate having me on. I apologize if I talk too much, but
no. Why do people say that? Everyone says that.
I don't know.
Chris even said that to me. And Bloom.
I don't talk as much on Kicking It, I feel like. So this was I'm having to drink a lot more water because I'm talking.
You're the guest.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, I appreciate it. Good questions. And I enjoy these series because you get to know someone a little more for who they are.
Yeah.
Which is one thing we're doing with the like I said, the Kicking It, not trying to promote it too much on here.
You're good.
But it's interesting for me to get to know someone better. So I hope listeners enjoy this, to get to know me a little bit more. Then just keep it up, keep the series up. It's fun. Well,
and it's like college football specifically, because I mean that's all we can think about, right? At this point, we're gearing up for it. There's just so much going on.
Yeah.
NIL specifically about what's currently happening, like in the top part of it of like what's in the future and like all the transfers, they just dominate our everyday feed. So
that and realignment.
Yeah. And so being able to just kind of sit back down and deep dive back into like stories about Iowa State. What was your experience like? That's what I want this podcast to be. I want us to remember things and relive like old stories. Like Chris, the last one we did, he talked about the 5 biggest stories he's covered. And I think that's fun. I think it helps us enjoy the summer and not be so bogged down by the doom of what's the future of the Big 12
no,
and
for
Iowa
sure.
State.
For sure. And it's, you know, I've really enjoyed just the different episodes and different, you know, stances that all the shows on Cyclone Fanatic have taken, because it is a little lighter and it's a little more evergreen episodes, if you will. So no, I've really appreciated, I've really enjoyed all of the different podcasts that we've had.
Well, thank you, Grant. I really appreciate this. I look forward to us doing another podcast in the future.
For sure.
I
Yeah.
hope.
You'd mentioned, you know, doing one where we talk about the, you know, the stupid shows or
The Bachelor.
Yeah. I mean, just whatever.
We got to find a way to get a pop culture podcast going.
Yeah. So, although I've kind of gone off the Bachelor train, but I got
There's plenty.
I got some pushback.
I would say, I
got pushback from that. People are like,
Really?
less Bachelor talk, more football talk. I said, well, all right.
We have to have balance. That's what I tell people.
Yeah.
I have a balance. It's like I consume sports about 27.
Yeah.
Let me have the other 4 hours for trashy TV.
Yeah.
But awesome. Well, thank you, Grant. I really appreciate you. And shout out to our sponsors, Ivy College of Business, which they offer great degrees.
Yeah.
For all the things that we're doing.
I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Grant.